Between 2018 and 2020, the Chun Men Chuk Lap Kok TBM was used to drill more than 5 kilometres of tunnel, 50 metres below sea level, to connect the Hong Kong International Airport to Hong Kong's northwest New Territories. It is 120 metres long, 17.6 metres in diameter, it weighs 4,850 tonnes, and it cost 18.2 billion Hong Kong dollars to build. Until Friday night, it was widely recognised as the biggest boring thing to have ever existed, but we now have Partick Thistle 0, Wraith Rovers 0. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and drawing the short straw alongside me tonight to look back at Friday's footballing spectacle and also look ahead to Tuesday's trip to Cappielow. We've got Robbie Weir. First of all, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm thoroughly impressed by that introduction, as ever. Wish I could do stuff like that. As I say, short and sweet's my MO for introductions, so you can continue your intricate ones.
Thank you, mate. We've also got Leslie Maybon as well. How are you, Les?
I'm not taking tiredness as an excuse. You think you're tired, but you're no tired. Well, I'm sorry, Barry, but I was a wee bit tired by the end of that game on Friday night.
Yep. And we've also got Carol Allison-Smith as well. How are you, Carol?
All right. It's been 100 days of rain constantly in Madrid, pretty much 100 days constantly of rain in Barcelona. And the game on Friday was just the icing on the cake of a pretty miserable week. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not overly sympathetic to your rain trouble, Carol, if I'm completely honest with you. But, yeah, if last Friday was a high watermark for entertainment with us laughing ourselves silly at Dunfermline's travails, I think this week was very much the other end of the spectrum. Given the state of the park, probably not too surprising that the goalmouth action was broadly limited to 3 headers, or 2 and a bit, maybe. And I'm fairly sure that about 80% of this podcast is going to revolve around one challenge in the middle of the park. Don't even particularly have anything interesting in the lineups to talk about. As suspected, it was an unchanged Rovers starting 11, although we did get George Guitau's presence on the bench as a nice kind of pleasant surprise. Robbie, let's start. Just give me your overall impressions, your overall reflections on that game, please.
Yeah, what can you say? I mean, first half I thought that we were actually decent. I didn't think that we were too bad. I thought that we were sort of linking up well sort of going forward. I know that I'd been slightly down in the pre-match podcast about Josh Mullen potentially being at wing back up against maybe Megwa going forward. Megwa then gets injured in the warm-up, so that's obviously quite a big bonus for us. I know that he's not at the best of seasons, but it does kind of force it. And then, yeah, you've got Josh Reid. Christ, almost done it again. On the other side, basically, I don't think he was up to much. But, yeah, I think that over the piece, yeah, the second half just saw us go into our shells quite a lot. It was good to see George Guitau get onto the bench. That's the most important thing as well. Just that he's potentially getting an avenue into coming back into the team. We know how notoriously hard it is for players to come back into a Barry Robson lineup, of course. But yeah, just quite intrigued to see where we head from this direction, because there wasn't much in the game at all. You've got to remember that Ayr went to play against Thistle last week, got beat quite comfortably 2-0. So I can imagine that quite a lot of Thistle fans, they'll have taken the draw, but again, you saw them sort of purring about that performance against Ayr, and then we've managed to keep them out at one end. But yeah, really, really not a lot going forward, especially in the second half. A really quite tame performance, I would say, in the second half.
Yeah. Barry Robson, after the game, very reasonably, I thought he kind of mentioned the pitch and talking about a couple of other things. I didn't get the feeling he was using them as excuses by any means at all. But he did say that they made a very deliberate attempt to kind of pull back, maybe on the amount of passing and the amount of football on the ground, with that in mind. Carol, how much sympathy do you have for, I mean, I suppose really the managers of both sides having to try and put a team out on a park like that?
50-50. I mean, both teams are playing it, but it's that age-old debate. They shouldn't be playing on it. They shouldn't be playing on a surface like that. I think it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if you saw the viral clip of the Real Madrid's women's team playing on a pitch midweek that was just absolutely atrocious. They shouldn't be playing on it. That shouldn't even be an option, and especially when you have a state-of-the-art pitch sitting there with its multi-level greenhouses. It's like this shouldn't be happening, and it is hard because it wasn't a good game of football, and it was never going to be a good game of football on that surface.
Yeah, I never went back to watch sort of like, well, I don't know why I would, but anything from Thistle against Ayr United. But it'd be interesting to see kind of how that game went. Presumably Thistle weren't passing triangles all around Ayr United for the whole of the afternoon.
Funny listening to Draw, Lose or Draw, as I do, because again, people think it's weird, but I listen to other clubs' podcasts. One of the guys on their podcast is involved now in the media side of things at Thistle. So he was saying that Scott Brown's quite funny manager to do an interview with after games, because he basically prompts the interviewer to say, like, as soon as you go in the room, he'll say to you, ask me about this or ask me about that. So he was, can you ask me about the pitch, basically? And yeah, obviously went off. And I think that's like David Martindale, Scott Brown, and now obviously Barry Robson coming on about the pitch. I'm going to stick up for Thistle a wee bit. I mean, in terms of clubs at this level, let's be honest, nobody's really got the resources to be able to maintain a grass pitch. I think it's quite an important...
Barry Robson says that as well.
Yeah, I think it's quite an important factor to sort of say, like, look, it's a tough gig for any club at this level to be able to sustain a pitch, because there's so little money, and the money that you do get, you don't want to be wasting it on something like that, compared to if you can get a better calibre of player that's maybe going to do a job for you in the summer. So I do have a degree of sympathy. Again, we'll always get stick for the sort of artificial surface side of things, but yeah, it's one way or another, you're going to get slaughtered, basically.
I think that really comes down to what you care about, if I'm perfectly honest. I think so much of the criticism of the plastic pitches is based on aesthetics, particularly how they look on the telly. And to be fair, when Livingston were playing St Johnstone in the Cup, and it was on the telly on the Monday night, it looked abysmal. And there's so much reflection of the floodlights off the pitch that it looks absolutely terrible. But I don't really care how it looks. I'd much rather, even Livingston, which I think renowned as the worst plastic park, you'd get a much better game on it than you got on Friday night. Carol, as you say, it's the same for both teams. It's not giving anybody an advantage or a disadvantage. It's about, can you actually play football on it? And at the point when the manager's having to say beforehand, we're going to have to effectively abandon what we want to do because of the pitch, you're on a loser.
And it's not going to get any better. It's not like it's going to just suddenly sprout loads of grass and look lush like a bowling green in the next couple of weeks. It's just going to go downhill.
Exactly. That's it cooked till the summer. And then at that point, it's a case of, can this be salvaged or is it needing to be relayed? And obviously, it's not just Thistle. I think Dunfermline's pitch is worse than Thistle's. And there's others in other divisions, obviously, that are in similar nick. Les, how do you feel about that game now, having had sort of 24 hours longer than 24 hours to percolate?
Yeah, I mean, in isolation, that's not a bad result. You're going to Firhill and coming away with a 0-0 draw against a team that you're probably going head-to-head with for the same position is not, on its own, a bad result. So I was doing a wee bit of kind of number crunching. I hate to call it statistics because I'm not actually that skilled, but there's a real kind of step change. Again, is too generous. There's an uptick in our performance after the 3-0 game away to Falkirk. So up until the 3-0 loss to Falkirk, we took 23 points from 14. We took 15 points from 16 games, which is like less than a point a game. And that's, quite frankly, relegation form. Since then, we've taken 23 points from 14 games, which is about 1.64 points per game. So I worked out, if we'd kind of been playing like we have been since that Falkirk game, we would be a lot closer to Thistle. I mean, I don't think we wouldn't be challenging for the title, but we'd be a lot closer to Thistle if you were able to take a few points off Livy and a few points off Falkirk. Then it might be a wee bit closer, but I think all of it, which is a very kind of long and roundabout way of saying that I don't think we're going to get fourth, but it's not going to be because we didn't beat Thistle on Friday night. I think it's the road we made for our own back earlier in the season. And interestingly as well, just another thing, I looked into this a wee bit further. So Neil Collins took 18 points from 13 games, and Barry Robson's taken 14 from 11, and that includes the Ayr game when he was just in the door. So broadly speaking, they've done more or less about the same. I mean, it does feel like we've been a lot more settled, I think, by Barry Robson, as opposed to the 4D chess and stuff that we got with Neil Collins. But yeah, I mean, as I say, it's it would have been nice to have won, but if we don't make fourth, it's not because of the fact that we didn't beat Thistle on Friday night.
Yeah.
I would just echo the points you're all making as well about the pitch, that it's not an excuse, but it does influence what happens. It does affect how both teams can play, and both teams like to kind of move the ball about quite a lot and play things on the deck. It does influence what happens. So yeah, I mean, it absolutely is a factor too.
Listen, I don't think any of us are saying like if that pitch was better, like the Rovers would be better in isolation. It's not like we'd have had a better chance of winning that game. I think if the pitch was better, the game would have been better, and that I think that's the overarching point, is that we're painting ourselves into a corner with some of these pitches, and it's the game as a whole that suffers. Just it's to piggyback onto your hard work with your numbers there. Probably also worth pointing out as well that I don't think it's unfair to say that Barry Robson's had a tougher selection, a tougher pool to select from, certainly up front.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that, 23 points from the last 14 games compared to 15 from the first 16 games. A lot of those games, you've relatively slim pickings up front. So it is definitely an uptick. And
just to come in there, I would probably comment on that. I feel like Robson's got more out of the resources that he's had than Collins did. Like Collins, we brought in obviously Cody David, who was a bit of a gamble, but never really done anything outside that Fife derby. And then Lewis Jamieson, who came in before Neil Collins was appointed, who I kind of feel like we got a break by him going away. But then again, Robson's not really utilised Aidan Marsh at all, really, to any great effect, which I think everyone would be keen to see a bit more rotation on that front, but it's just not the way that Barry Robson works. It's just, you know what to expect. If you're getting a player on off the bench, it's going to be a limited 15-minute per window that they're getting to really show what they can do, which is frustrating for both the fans and I'd imagine for the players as well. If you're on that bench and you're sitting there saying, well, I'm not really getting an opportunity here.
Just on a slightly separate point, or a related point in terms of, we're still talking about gunning for fourth, because obviously that was the big thing playing Thistle and even playing Morton on Tuesday night. On a slightly more general level, Robbie, do you think there's any prospect of the team that finishes fourth, whoever it is, making any kind of inroads in these playoffs, given the apparent gap between third and fourth?
No, I mean, I think you'd really be needing to look at a sort of, ironically, a Partick Thistle-esque sort of that first season under Doolan where they made the playoff finals, I think it was, when they went up to Ross County, because they made it into fourth on the final day, ironically, again, against us, when we had nothing to play for. And then they kind of just lit up. It was like watching a touch paper go, basically, in terms of a fuse. Like, they just kicked on. They played Queen's Park, who they'd struggled against all season, who'd been battling to basically win the league, and then finished third. They got through them, and then they went on to play Ayr United, who'd under Lee Bullen had somehow managed to sneak into second with Deepwack and Yemi up top. And then after that, they went up to Dingwall, raced into a lead, and then collapsed spectacularly, again, very funnily, with Stuart Bannigan and his misses. And it's just, I think you would really need to be looking to a run like that, but I don't think any of the teams have really got the prospect of potentially being able to do that. I think that it's more about, I think from our perspective, again, it's more about finishing as high as we can to sort of maximise the prize pool that we can get. And I'm sure that the players will probably feel differently, but I just feel like it's just, with the circumstances that we've got, I feel like there's not really the depth there in terms of the squad, and the fact that we're missing Jack Hamilton and Callum Smith, and then on top of that you've got Lewis Vaughan just coming back just at the moment from injury. I feel like Barry Robson's really, if he could crack it, I feel like it's going to be too late. I feel like, because just going at these final few games, Thistle have got that advantage, obviously, in that they've got points on board. We do have a game in hand again against Greenock Morton, who are, again, going ahead. They're probably in a stronger position that we are going in for these playoffs. So yeah, it's hard to be down on the squad because, again, I always back the Rovers, but at the same time, you've got to be realistic about it all.
Yeah, I don't think it's about being down on the squad necessarily. I think it's a reflection of how the season's gone. And obviously, like, playoffs, absolutely no regard for what's gone before, but even in comparison to, you know, the season that you talked through there, what you don't have, or certainly what it looks like you won't have this season, is that kind of the team in second hitting the playoffs sort of crestfallen, which has happened previously. As soon as, I think, this coming weekend, Falkirk could have the League One. So Ayr and Livingston know what they're dealing with in the run-up to that. And it's felt for a long time now that's where the divide is. You've effectively got 3 teams at the top and then everybody else. And it just does feel like whoever it is will be making up the numbers a little bit. But, of course, you never know. And if it was us, you'd be absolutely delighted to go into it. And it really, I think, would be a very easy mindset to adopt of, like, forget who cares what's happened? Who cares who picked up what points in, November? We've got a free hit, we can go into it. So, fingers crossed, obviously that's where we end up. But again, I think it was interesting, us against Thistle, into that sort of, if they'd beaten us, I think they would have probably put our chances, to bed. If we'd beaten them, we'd have put ourselves right back into it, and it ended up being quite a drudgy 0-0. You're like, neither of these teams has late season charge stamped all over them. Right, we've been avoiding it for long enough. Let's get into some of the things that happened in this game. Fair play to Wraith TV, by the way, for getting nearly 7 minutes of highlights out of that. That's a great indicator for when a game's not been good, because generally you'll get a good solid 10 minutes out of anything. Like 2 laddies playing football in the street and Ian Gree will get you 10 minutes of highlights. But we'll get 6 minutes and 59 seconds, and I think the first minute is effectively the lineups just over the top of them waiting to take kickoff. So not a huge amount in this, but the first sort of substantial headline is really the Rovers' kind of only, I think, chance that forces the keeper into doing something. Jamie Gullen's free kick is kind of swinging in. Callum Fordyce gets something on it, a little bit of a kind of flick on the header, but I think can't quite do enough to change the trajectory of the ball, and the keeper gets down to kind of palm that away. Les, did it feel like if the Rovers were going to get anything, create anything, it was going to have to come from a set piece like that?
I'm not sure if it would have to come from a set piece, but you got the feeling it would certainly have had to have come in the first half, before people start getting tired, and then before Robson started refusing to make substitutes. I think it was probably looking more likely, given the condition of the pitch, that's where something was going to come from. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it in here before. I mean, I am always a bit reluctant to put someone like Jamie Gullen on set pieces where he's not just going to shoot for goal, whether that's corners or free kicks towards the edge of the pitch. Because to me, it just does feel a bit counterintuitive to be taking your centre forward out the box. However, he is a very good deliverer. Is that a word? Deliverer. Or he can deliver a ball very well.
Deliveryman?
Delivery person. Yeah. Courier. So Jamie Gullen can deliver a ball really well. We saw it in the derby at Starks Park. We saw that the ball that he put in for Paul Hanlon, and it very nearly got us another goal there. Had a couple of other deliveries a bit later in the first half that were not quite as successful. One where he went for a shot and it went sailing way over the bar. Another one where he fired one and it just didn't quite connect with anybody. But I mean, that was probably ended up being our best chance of the night, and it came quite early on. I think we've maybe talked about this before. It's something that we've struggled to do is have centre backs popping up with goals. And if you look at other teams like Hamilton, McGinty pops up quite often with goals, and I don't know if that's him actually having any agency or if it's just him staggering and the ball bouncing off his forehead and going in the net. Nonetheless, it does produce goals.
A goal's a goal. We'll take it.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's it. If you've got your centre backs or even your midfielders popping up with 3-4 goals each a season, it's going to help. So I do think we are very slowly getting better with the set pieces, and I think Jamie Gullen's deliveries help with that. With the quality of pitch, I mean, that was where you would have fancied us to have got something from, I do think, though.
Yeah, I think there's generally a bit of a lack of just getting shots away. And sometimes it can be quite wasteful, but when the alternative is just 0 shots at all, yeah, you kind of start to wonder. I just think it's notable in the 2 brief appearances that we've had from Lewis Vaughan. Both times that he's come on, within about 2 minutes, he's had a shot. Now, they've both been terrible. They're nowhere near anything. But like just 2 snapshots where the ball drops to him, he's 25 yards out, and he just hits it. And that's actually what we miss a fair bit of the time, is actually just really, really simple. And that is as basic as it gets. But just getting shots away and actually... because that, like, quite simply, Friday night, 90 minutes of football, no shots. Certainly no shots on target. There's that one header, as I say, from Fordyce very early on, and that's it. It's slightly frustrating. But as I say, there's mitigating factors there. I wasn't, sitting in the stand on Friday, absolutely kind of fuming watching it play out. As I said, predominantly I was quite bored. It was a very poor game overall, but feels very much like we're not likely to create kind of moments of magic in that sense. We're, for whatever reason, much more likely to just win penalties, which has worked for us to a certain degree so far. But right, after that, we get to probably the big talking point. Jordan Doherty is a slightly loose ball that's kind of getting away from him, but he's still very much in control of it. And our old friend Stuart Bannigan comes crashing in. Carol, you were obviously watching this in the telly. How obvious was it to you just how bad that challenge was, kind of at first glance?
Very. With watching it both on BBC and Wraith TV, they've got the cameras at either side, so you get both shots. And you're like, that's high. There's no way that's not hit his thigh, and he's went in studs up. There was no way, and you were like, that's got to be a card. And the ref pulled out the card quite quickly, but not the right colour.
Yeah, I mean, Les, to contrast that, you were literally sat right behind me in the stand, so we had exactly the same angle. But what was your thought initially?
I was slightly to the left of you, so my view of what happened was obscured by a pillar. So what happened was...
Well, that was most of Wraith TV as well. That pillar makes a great, great appearance for most of the highlights.
So I saw Doherty going for the ball. Then I saw Bannigan going in with his foot quite high up. And then there was a pillar. And then the next thing I saw was Doherty lying on the ground writhing in agony and a lot of very angry people and Bannigan getting a yellow card. I then saw, I think you must have seen the same thing as me, somebody circulated at half-time the video from the TV. of the incident, and it quite quickly became apparent that that was an absolutely appalling tackle. Now, I like a tackle. I mean, I love it when Ross Matthews goes through somebody, but that was downright dangerous. I don't like to be clutching pearls about football, because it is to an extent a contact sport, but that was properly downright dangerous. And if it had been the other way around, if that had been Ross Matthews going through Logan Chalmers' kneecaps, Partick fans would quite rightly be outraged. It was a horrendous tackle, and I think that's the thing. We didn't see properly what had happened in the stand. You don't get the benefit of the replay, but God Almighty! I mean, if you were able to cite people like you are in rugby, that's the kind of thing where you'd be wanting to pull Bannigan up and give him a 3 or 4 game ban. It's properly dangerous.
I like that dynamic that you've got there. It's like the kind of late 90s in the wrestling. They had a bit of a turn against like the outright violence. If someone was going to hit someone else with a chair, it would cut away just for the impact. Feels like that's what happened for you there. You just kind of seen the impact coming, and then there's a blank spot, and then it cuts back in, and there's just bodies everywhere. Yeah, it was funny that, because my immediate thought as it happened was that's a red card, but my immediate thought to loads of stuff that happens to Rovers players is that's a red card. Like, that's just the way I am. So I kind of wait for like the wider reaction to sort of temper mine. But as you say, having seen it back, because that was my immediate thing, was like into the group chat, like, I think that was a red card. And just like everybody who's watching the telly is like, yes, like categorically that's a red card. So Robbie, obviously you said so at the time. Do you think there's any mitigation for the referee in this? Is he possibly on the blind side of it, or is that one that you've really got to get right first time?
No, I think that he can see it. He's if you watch the highlights, like, Dylan Easton is kind of in his way just as Bannigan's going towards the ball and Doherty, and then Easton's out of his way by the time that the connection's been made, so the referee needs to be getting that right. It's an absolute shocker. There's no sort of mitigation for it.
You could see the marks on Doherty's leg. There was no way the referee could not have said that there was studs high.
I don't know how much that came across on the telly, what angles they were catching at what time. But when the physio was treating him, he was screaming, like lying on the floor, screaming at the referee, about how bad a challenge that was, and rightly so. I think that's you're right. There's no mitigation. There's no.
I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that it was almost. It did look certainly like Bannigan and the Thistle players were going out of their way to be overtly physical against us. Bannigan in particular, I mean, obviously we all saw the head loss in the last game against us. And to be honest, it was quite interesting to watch the reaction of a lot of the Thistle fans to say, oh, he's got you on strings, etc. There's a huge difference between calling out a clear and obvious red card and asking why a referee's not given it, compared to the sort of point and laugh nature of what happened before with Bannigan at Starks Park. But yeah, it's just the way, obviously, that some football fans view things. I would like to think again, if it was the other way around, we've seen plenty before where we've seen challenges that you think, you can see why it should be a red card or deemed a red card. But yeah, it's just pretty fucking horrific, to be honest. It's just one where there's a serious chance of doing an injury to a player, and it's just a complete disregard for a fellow professional. So yeah, it's no shortage of calling that out.
Yeah, it's categorically it's a red card. It just always has been and always will be. And a shame that the officials missed it. There are 3 of them there. The referee's got the card out very quickly, and as soon as he does, he's never going to be overruled by.
But I don't understand, because, like Robbie said, Partick had been handsy and quite physical beforehand, and none of those challenges got picked up. And I don't understand how that one was deemed a yellow, because that was much more physical than anything else beforehand. Even if it had been studs high, it was definitely more physical than been beforehand.
Well, that's the thing, is I think that Thistle are a team in Brian Graham's image, and I really mean that as a compliment as much as anything. Like, very pick your euphemism, like streetwise, all this kind of stuff. But effectively, they are operating in a realm where most of the time they know where the line is. And like the game was like that. There a couple of points where Josh Mullen was just like shoving Josh Reed. You've got me doing it now. Just like shoving him into the ground off the park. Both sides were at it. But the thing that to your point, Carol, the thing that bothered me about it as much as anything was that Ross Matthews was picked up for 2 fouls in that first half where he very clearly won the ball. And it's one of these sort of, I'm going to get a bit GB News here, but one of these real like modern interpretations of the rules where it's all like, it's player safety and like it doesn't matter if you've won the ball because if the force is there, it's still dangerous. And again, from my very biased kind of viewpoint, I thought both of those Matthews challenges were like fine, effectively, like on the right side of the line, where he's won the ball, he's maybe caught the man as well, but I thought they were both good challenges. But if you're drawing the line so far to that side for challenges like that, like you can win the ball, but if you then catch a man, that's a foul. Surely the line for what constitutes a red card has to move kind of proportionately with it. In which case, you certainly can't be... Like, you could have your foot as high as Bannigan does and catch the man nowhere near as badly as that and see a red card in some
Yep.
It's the inconsistency among the referees, though. That's the whole thing. Like, you'll see some referees that are really quickly on it. We've seen some red cards earlier this season where... Liam Dick against Livingston's probably the perfect example. 2 bookings that were just never really bookings, and yet you can go into a game like that and you'll see it. But again, if you're good enough, you don't need refereeing decisions to win you a game. And I think that's the main thing. It was right to call it out, but at the same time, I think that the performance was sort of powder puff in the second half that like we need to be doing better. And I think Barry Robson's absolutely right to sort of say we should have the confidence to look and say, like, we're going to Firhill, we can go out and beat them. And I don't think that's arrogant or sort of over the top to be suggesting it. We've actually got a really good record against Thistle, particularly at Starks Park, but even at Firhill, we've not lost against them in the last couple of years. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be going there and being able to win. Obviously, it does help if you get the refereeing decisions that should be called in the right way, but at the same time, I don't think it really excuses the sort of lacklustre nature of maybe the second half that we had.
Yeah, and not to just jump on all the hot talking points to kill for time, so just run by this one very quickly to say that I would still rather have mistakes like that than VAR.
Yeah.
But again, we can come back to that another day. Very shortly after half time, actually, I don't know if it was very shortly, it's the next thing in my notes, could have happened at any point, really. There was a penalty shout. Now, this seems to be a bit of a divide between people on the ground and people watching on the telly. Because in the ground, again, sort of live at the time, Paul Hanlon is getting some fairly kind of close attention. Now, it's right at the opposite end from where we seem to get shifted around to a different part of Firhill every time we're there, incidentally. So we're at the other end. It's a bit of kind of close attention. He goes down. There's a bit of a shout. There's not a huge amount from Paul Hanlon, as much as anyone. He kind of looks around and he's back up on his feet and he's getting back. But then the kind of immediate reaction from the sort of the TV audience is that's a penalty. So Robbie, is that a fair riff? Is that what you thought at the time? Do you think that's a penalty kick?
Yeah, I mean, with the TV audience being part of the TV loyal for that Friday game, it looked it, I felt. I feel like it's one of those ones where it's just because it's who it is rather than the sort of instant itself. I feel like if it was Dylan Easton, then he's got to be a lot more streetwise in terms of being able to win a penalty there. It's almost like Paul Hanlon's a bit too honest. He sort of stays up for too long and then he goes down and then there's not really much appeal because it's a sort of 50-50. You could see that he was getting his sort of shirt tugged as he was trying to break for the ball. And again, if it had been a penalty, it would be a really daft one to lose from a Thistle perspective because he's going nowhere. He's moving away from goal. But yeah, I feel like it was just one where the referee's probably not had enough there to give it. And although that penalty decisions shouldn't be that way. They should be sort of ones that a degree of consistency with it. But again, it's just anything can happen with these referees. And with Paul Hanlon, I think that, it was just the wrong person to have on the ball at that point to sort of force the referee to make a decision in a way.
Yeah, Carol, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the BBC commentary were shouting for it straight away that it was a penalty, and then in the post-match, Robson arrived just as they were replaying it, and he was saying under his breath before he even went live on the mic, definitely a penalty. And yeah, I think it had been anybody else, they would have, I don't want to say played for the penalty, but they would have acted up to get it. But I think Hanlon was just, he's too cool for school. And yeah. If it been, like Robbie said, if it had been Easton, he would have got up, been dramatic, it would have been in everybody's face. But for Hanlon, it's like, c'est la vie. Let's get on with this.
And in terms of the sort of the rest of the second half, then Robbie, you already mentioned it, but it was a bit of a game of two halves in the sense that first half I thought the Rovers were the better side without creating anything. Kept Thistle at arm's length for a good part of it. I mean, the kind of 10-15 minutes before half time, Thistle barely crossed the halfway line. And it was actually a little bit kind of galling that with all that territory, we didn't really manage to get a single shot away. But they did change things around. Second half, Les, very much Thistle on top. Again, not loads of chances, but really, it felt like if the Rovers are going to do anything, it would have been first half.
I'd agree with that completely. We've got one way of playing and effectively one set of players that Barry Robson trusts to get him through the first 85 minutes of games. And we sort of hit that kind of point that we inevitably hit in games where we just get tired. The fatigue starts to set in. And I thought, I think we were all right in the first half without us, like you say, without actually getting an awful lot of shots away. We had a good number of chances, but you could just see the fatigue setting in, and trying to play like that for a full 90 minutes is very challenging. And you could see with the shift as well, Partick were getting a lot more joy out of Logan Chalmers in the second half. There was a period of about 15-20 minutes where almost everything was going through Logan Chalmers. And he was again cutting inside, he was getting a few shots away, and they had a whole raft of corners as well. And there was a whole raft of corners, one after another. And you're kind of thinking, I think I messaged the group chat, it got to about the 65th minute, and I said, this is starting to feel very like the game we lost at New Broomfield to Airdrie, in that the first half was pretty level. The second half was kind of level, but you could just see it, rather than just being Rovers chance, Partick chance, Rovers chance, it started just being like Partick chance, Partick possession, Partick chance, Partick corner. And you got a feeling that you're like, there's an inevitability about this that Partick are going to score, which I think probably tees you up to the next thing we maybe want to talk about, which is our goalkeeper.
Yes, they do fashion sort of two chances from this. So one is a corner kick, and then the other, it's play coming down that right hand side. I'm assuming, I actually can't remember, I'm assuming, given where it came from, that it's Logan Chalmers putting the cross over. Brian Graham heads it back across, and I think it's Robbie Crawford who gets the header in. Robbie, it's two saves from Josh Ray. Where are you categorising those on the good save-ometer?
Yeah, I think that they were both good saves, and just in terms of Josh Ray, I think that he adds that sort of solidity. There were ones that, particularly the header that sort of he managed to tip away, was probably the best of the bunch. But yeah, I feel like he's just added that sort of solidity there, and he's been a good addition to the squad. I'm really interested to see how it pans out with him moving forward, because with St Johnstone obviously they're potentially staring down the relegation zone in the top flight. Whether they decide to keep him, I can't see Simo Valakari looking to keep him about, but he's under a 2-year deal. I suspect that we're probably not going to be the only club in the Scottish Championship if he does. If they do go down, and if they're looking to sort of jettison players, that would be looking at Josh Ray. So we might have a bit of a fight if he does want to, if he's potentially coming back to Coddy. I think it's all credit to him. I know Kev's a very, very popular character among the fans. Maybe that waned off a bit, but Josh Ray's done incredibly well to sort of come in and cement his place and just sort of remove any questions about that. So you've got to give him credit.
Just to add, I was doing a wee bit of stats there, that's why my head was down. I was kind of trying to crunch some numbers. So Josh Ray has had 7 league games, and he's had 5 clean sheets in those 7 league games. Actually, 5 clean sheets, I think, in 7 league games. Kev, on the other hand, has had 6 from 22. So, I mean, granted, that's not all down to the goalkeeper. There's a number of other factors at play there, including, how we set up and who we kind of play against. But the number of clean sheets he's getting, that's definitely a reflection on how well he's done and how well the defence in front of him have done since he came in. Yeah, so I'd just echo that. I would not be averse to him coming back next season. Yeah.
Again, as you say, that there's multiple factors in it, because I think Kev's still got more clean sheets this season than he did last season.
Yeah.
When, as a whole, the team was much better. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. But, yeah, certainly Josh Ray's not having to make a dozen saves a game. But a lot of that, again, is down to your goalkeeper. It's what goes on beforehand so that you don't have to be making saves. And yes, it will be an interesting one come the summer. The other kind of talking point from this one, and it kind of leads into Tuesday night as well, so I think we can forgive ourselves a little bit of kind of cross-contamination in the discussion here. Very interesting to see Aidan Connolly coming off the bench first, with Finlay Pollock coming off. Given that we're not going to have Pollock for Tuesday night, I think it was always going to be interesting to see how early he came off to get someone else a goal. And I think, maybe naively, I think we'd all assumed that the player to come on would be our only other striker. Robbie, do you think that's a window into what we might expect on Tuesday? The fact that Aidan Connolly came on ahead of... Aidan Marsh was only 5 minutes behind them, but that Aidan Connolly came on into that kind of forward position initially?
Yeah, potentially, but it's just... I don't feel too enthusiastic about it. Connolly's came in. He's had a sort of spell late under Neil Collins where he started getting game time and getting a few goals, used as a sort of secondary striker. But yeah, I would just prefer Aidan Marsh to be coming on first. So it was one that I would probably disagree with Barry Robson. I just feel like Aidan Marsh is naturalised in the position. He's shown he's got a bit about him, particularly his debut against Falkirk, where he was really, really causing them a lot of issues. He came and got his goal against Accies, and then he's just been frozen out of the team, so it doesn't really make too much sense from looking from an outside perspective. So yeah, I would personally prefer to be sort of going with Marsh up top over Connolly. But then again, it's Lewis Vaughan's not available, so whether he's fit for Tuesday. So it really makes it a sort of, you don't know which way he's going to be going. It's a very strange situation.
The other point with the substitutes, Carol, Barry Robson after the game said that he felt that maybe he should have made his substitutions earlier. Do you agree with Barry Robson's words, or do you agree with Barry Robson's actions?
He needs to start substituting them early. I know he's against them being tired, but Gullen was fucked on Friday night. He was done. He was just... It's like... As someone who goes to the gym quite regularly and had to get their boyfriend to take their socks off for them on Friday night because I'd overdone it, you get tired, okay? Just let them have a little rest. So yeah, I think it just to see, because we haven't seen Marsh since he's been frozen out. Give him a run. We have not scored goals because we have no goal scorers, and we don't seem to want to put goal scorers on the field. And it doesn't matter how many clean sheets we have, all that ends up with is 0-0 draws. And 0-0 draws don't get playoff places or win leagues. And it just feels like we've just got our league started with 8 games, 7 games to go. Oh, we've just got started, but it's maybe too little too late. But if we could get a run together, it would be a great end to the season. And maybe, just maybe, we would get into that 4th position. But not if our players are absolutely broken.
See, on the point of Jamie Gullen, I know, was it yourself, Leslie, or I can't remember whether it was yourself or Ian or Blair in the chat was sort of saying that with Jamie Gullen, it's actually pretty remarkable how well he's done in terms of, because I know that he'd had consistent sort of injury problems before. Now, this is very much like touch wood, but like he seems to have managed to sort of move past that and become a bit stronger, and physically he seems to be handling the demands a bit better. Obviously, he's still going down at the end of the matches because he's so fucking tired. I think it'll be a new one for our physio if we get a first case of like a Rovers player that's managed to get rhabdomyolysis simply because of how much work they're doing. Like, just, yeah, it's Iron Man triathlon territory.
If I had the commitment to this podcast that Les does, I would have actually looked this up. I've not. Just to see the kind of usage of substitutes. Who uses how many and when do they use them? Because it does feel like the kind of to the naked eye, Barry Robson's very averse to using his substitutes, and it just feels counterproductive. It feels like if you got 5 subs that you can use, I mean, just kind of more generally, I'm surprised there's not more half-time substitutes since the introduction of 5 subs. Like, and from as a deliberate strategy from the beginning. Like, if you've got 2 guys who are roughly at the same level, just saying, right, you're going to play the first half, you're going to play the second half. And then they both know they've only got to knock their pans in for 45 minutes. Anyway, that's an aside I'm doing. It feels like the kind of thing you could do more of. And the other thing, this is a very minor point, but Robson's final 2 subs on Friday night made within about 2 minutes of each other. Just make them at the same time. Then you've got an extra sub you can use. You get an extra stoppage if somebody goes down with an injury. That seems, again, so mad to me.
That a triple sub with 15 minutes to go.
Exactly. Like, just making 3 individual subs, you're kind of tying your own hands together. But that's a very minor thing. That's not me piling more stuff on Barry Robson.
On the outside, could go the other way and just do a Darville and just go full Dunfermline Athletic and sub on an extra player.
Just make up your own rules. Right, I think I'd be happy to leave that Thistle game there. I think
I've got one complaint to make at the BBC Man of the Match.
Oh, yeah, right enough.
No, that's just wrong. On so many levels, wrong. Yeah, and they didn't seem happy with giving him it either. It was mentioned on the commentary.
Yeah,
Anakin got it. And then, yeah.
Yeah, the BBC choosing to give the Man of the Match to Stuart Bannigan feels... partly, I don't think he was the best player in the park anyway, by the way.
That aside.
Again, I probably would have gone Logan Chalmers. Like, as you said, Les, I thought if anything was going to happen second half, it was going to come from him. And even at that, I felt like half the time they were just banging diagonals onto him, and Paul Hanlon was clearing them up. Like, not giving this guy a great chance, but when he could get the ball down, he was doing well. But
who was it that smashed the ball into Brian Graham's face?
I don't know, but Brian Graham really did that damage to himself. It was really, I felt bad for a moment because it did look like actually he could have been seriously hurt, but it was a proper like Looney Tunes style scud right in the dish.
Like the birds flying above the head.
Yeah,
Mario, the coins.
Like trying to he's trying to get in the way of Ewan Murray, but then just like properly positioning his own face right in front of the ball was right in front of us as well. That was possibly the highlight.
I know that Brian Graham is really impressive. We know he manages the women's team, he manages the men's team, he's the captain, he's the goal scorer, he's also the referee. But he also managed to sub himself off while unconscious. That was amazing. It's like, I mean, like you, Duncan, I mean, I thought he was out and I was like, oh shit, like he's actually kind of properly hurt himself. Like, he was completely out cold. He was out sparkle for a couple of minutes. And his feet started moving. All right, he's okay, he's moving. And then the first thing that happens is you wake up and he's already subbed himself off. Although I suspect that was
the touchline barking out orders.
Cristiano Ronaldo style with the jacket on barking out orders. But yeah, I mean, so fair play to him for channeling the powers of telepathy and getting the instructions sent over that he was unable to continue. Well done, Brian Graham.
I thought you were going to say channeling the powers of Ewan Murray and taking one in the dish, to be fair, but...
Yeah, I'm undecided whether the highlight of the evening was Brian Graham having his clock cleaned like that, or that one back heel from Aidan Marsh. Possibly the other. item that makes the positives list. Right, let's leave that behind. Have a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about Greenock Morton. Blair,
Yes, mate.
you're a man,
Yes.
and you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know. Probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff. And they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
So the Rovers do have yet another game. They've been coming thick and fast. So this one, another rearranged effort as the Rovers go to Cappielow on Tuesday night. Les, you had said prior to Thistle that it wasn't a must-win. If the Rovers could get 4 points from these two games, that would still be in contention for the playoffs. So given that we drew on Friday night, is this now a must-win?
Yes, absolutely is. Absolutely, I think that's it. We need 4 points. If we beat Morton, it puts us 4 points behind Thistle, which is a long shot, but it keeps us in the hunt. I think if we fail to win, that is probably the end of it. And I mean, for anybody who was still maybe even slightly worried about relegation, Ayr equalising against Hamilton and Morton beating Queen's Park means that that's another round of fixtures gone by where two of the teams below us have not closed the gap. So, we're now on 38 points, and we will somehow, by hook or by crook, get ourselves to magical 40. So I think we do not need to worry about the relegation battle anymore, but this is a must-win if we are to have any chance of catching Partick. I mean, I'd almost go as far as to say is that if this is a draw, both us and Morton kind of drop out that race. If whoever loses also drops out the race. So there's quite a lot at stake, actually. So yes, we absolutely do have to win, I think, to get the 4 points that we need.
And Robbie, where are your confidence levels going into this one?
It's such a weird one. I mean, Morton have obviously done really well this season in terms of punching above their weight, as much as I'm loath to give them any credit, because the whole war a job type shtick that follows them about. They just seem to be getting the best out of the parts that they've got. They've had a few returns from injury recently. Grant Gillespie and Tommy Adeloy came off the bench, or Gillespie started, Adeloy came off the bench. I think they're still missing Ian Wilson, so whether he'll be back, he'd be a big loss for them. But yeah, I feel like you look at that Morton team and you think, yeah, we should be able to beat them, but then we've not been able to do it this season, which again, it's a point of frustration. That last game at Starks in particular was just a farce to lose. Sort of such cheap goals to work back into it, and then you lose the game just with like one of the last kicks. Just really, really rough to watch. I would love it if we did beat them. I think that, just in general, it's been frustrating to watch games against them. But you were hoping sort of when that game before got postponed that sort of kicks it down the line, we'd be able to get a few players back. Whether we've got Lewis Vaughan back for this one, and whether he'd be starting after sort of having a viral virus, then it's hard to say. Just intriguing, given that Robson's been so very rigid about the front line that he's used so far, and now he's forced to change it, so the direction that he goes.
Yeah, definitely. As we've touched upon, Carol, I think the big question is who comes in up front. And I think certainly if it was Neil Collins, we'd be having a big conversation about which system he's going to use and what all other changes he's going to make to accommodate this. Can you see any world where Barry Robson does anything other than just a straight swap in up front? And
Nope.
perfect.
Nope.
And
Nope.
so on that basis, then, are you Team Connolly or are you Team Marsh, or are you foreseeing a third option, assuming that Lewis Vaughan's not fit enough to come straight back in?
Having not seen, I mean, who have we seen more of, Marsh or Connolly? Because that's really what it comes down to. Who's scored more goals, Marsh or Connolly? I think it's flip the coin, really. If you're asking me, I would go heads Connolly, tails Marsh, and just flip it, because I don't think they're not in Robson's favour. Anyway at the moment. So unless he's going to see something in training that we're not. From my point of view, it's to flip a coin, which I know is not helpful, but
If Aidan Connolly is going to play up front anywhere, I think Cappielow is the place to do it. Given his headers last season, gave us his best target man impression. Les, how about you? Which way are you coming down on with this?
I'm coming down neither way. For me, what's happened is the coin is flipped up in the air and it's landed vertically stuck in the ground, because I'm going to say that he's going to play Lewis Gibson there instead. And I'm going to say that you could. There is a school of thought that says you could just say to Lewis Gibson, just go out and do exactly what Finlay Pollock does, which is we're going to send things up in a relatively controlled manner, and your job is just to run onto them and use your pace and directness and try and round the keeper. So there is another option here, which I think is that Lewis Gibson does the Finlay Pollock type running onto things and chasing things down and trying to round the keeper.
could he do it for the full 90 though? Or are we looking at like a 45 him and 45 Marsh?
I think that whoever starts doing it, I think Robson's going to leave them out there for 75 minutes regardless, and he's just going to keep saying, you think you're tired, but you're no tired. And he's going to have the high performance podcast of Jake Humphrey on speakers. So I would agree with that. That's the thing, that Gibson has not played a lot of football, but then again, neither's Marsh. So Marsh is, and I really feel for him, because he's getting. I think it was Ali had said in our group chat, he got a minute at Celtic Park and he got 2 minutes in the derby when the games in both cases were done and dusted. That doesn't really, under those conditions, you're not going to be able to bed yourself into the team. You're not going to get a chance to kind of work with your teammates. He got 10, 15 minutes against Firhill. That's not really a lot of time. He's probably actually had less game time than Gibson. So, but to all of them actually, because of the way the subs have been working out, because of the fact that Robson doesn't really seem to fancy, for whatever reason, any of them, they're all coming into this with really not a lot of game time under their belts.
That was the big thing for me on Friday night, was going into the game thinking, well, at least we'll get one early sub here, because he's going to have one eye on Tuesday. So, at our mark, surely Pollock's going to come off for whoever will start on Tuesday night, and we would have had a slightly more orderly conversation tonight. But 75th minute before Connolly came on, and as you say, 83rd before we got Marsh. So, I mean, maybe in that sense, the fact that Connolly came on first isn't an indication of anything at all. There's every chance that he was given no consideration to Tuesday night whatsoever, and that's just a new thought process that he's had to begin on Saturday morning. For me, I would be going Aidan Marsh, fairly heavily for whatever that would mean. Purely on the basis of playing players where they play. Really, it's not any more complicated than that for me. You're playing two up front. You've got one striker left. That's who you go with. I wouldn't be devastated to see that Aidan Connolly is starting for no reason other than the fact that, to go back to a point from earlier on, Aidan Connolly shoots.
Yeah,
one of the things he does, has shots. So I think he is. It's such a stupidly obvious thing to say, but he's a really good player. Aidan Connolly gives you quite a lot. Like, it feels a little bit cheap to be criticising Finlay Pollock given the goals he scored recently and the fact that he's got his 21s call up. And absolutely fair play to him, by the way, for missing out that first game to play on Friday night. But with the ball, feels a little bit like you don't get an awful lot from him other than the goals that he's scored. And again, that's a cheap criticism, especially given how few goals other people have been scoring for us. But you're not getting an awful lot of hold-up play. You're not getting an awful lot of link play. Aidan Connolly will give you a lot more of that. Much better option with the ball up until the final point. So it will be interesting to see. I think that there's various ways you could go, and it'll be interesting to see. It feels like, as I say, we're basically just breezed right past the possibility of any other changes. That's maybe a little bit short-sighted. There are other changes that he could make. But whether he actually does make any changes, I don't know. It feels unlikely at this point, but we will see. Robbie, is there any other changes you would want to make at this point?
Not particularly. I mean, Josh Mullen's done fine overnight, much to my concern, against some of the best attacking players in the league at Firhill. And again, I would say that as well, looking back to the Partick games, that's 3 out of 4 games that have managed to keep shutouts against them, which deserves a fair degree of praise given the attacking threats that they've got. Morton, it's going to be a very different game. I feel like they've done really well in terms of like playing through the lines on the counter against us. I don't think I would be changing any of the centre-back combinations. I feel like that's looked solid enough going forward. With Mullen, don't think I'd be replacing them with George Katow at the moment, just based on the performances that we've had. And I think that George will obviously be working in terms of his fitness and be hoping for an opportunity to come up. But I think for these players, it's just a case of sort of when the opportunity comes in, they really know that they've got to take it, because a chance to force Barry Robson's hand. He's done this by his own design, really. He's not got anyone to blame for him other than himself, and the fact that he's been so rigid in terms of keeping these players on, not making subs, not giving game time to anyone else. So when you do end up in a situation where you are relying on a player to come in, then yeah, you can't really be sort of looking anywhere else other than your own door for your own blame. But at the same time, the performances have been relatively consistent, other than that Queen's Park game, which was a bit of an anomaly. Generally, we've been solid enough. So, who knows how we'll do against Morton. I would love for us to get a result and be able to sort of be breathing down Partick Thistle's necks. But I suspect it'll be a very, very tough game, given the way that Morton are playing at the moment. They seem to be just getting really good results.
Two very similar teams, I think. A lot of different in a lot of ways, but very similar in others. And neither of us have really put a run together at any point this season, but also not really been terrible for a run of games either. Like, got the capability to beat anybody in this division on their day, and also the capability to lose to anybody in this division on their day, and also both have fairly heavily felt injuries as well, and have gone into games without forwards at various points. So
it's a shame they're not doing their pre-match preview that they used to do about big spending Raith Rovers. Just to touch on this, because which one of our clubs turned a profit there?
I think they could be in a bit of bother. I think I've been reading there. Let's not spend loads of time on this, but I think that is it Dalriada?
Dalriada. That was, I mean, I did a bit of look into that, and I think that's just their journalist that's involved with the Greenock Telegraph taking a bit of liberty in terms of what was getting made and what was getting said. I think that Dalriada had actually dropped quite a lot of value in terms of their stock, but again, it's not
just like share price fluctuations,
share price
stuff,
basically,
right? Okay,
that sort of thing.
Right. No, I only saw the headline, so.
Any opportunity to launch into a tirade against Morton, then I'd be there. But this is not one, unfortunately.
Nah, to be fair, it sounds like that's kind of their safety net. So I could do without any other clubs getting into real bother. Apart from one, maybe. Anyway, just before we go, because I think that'll do us for that. A little plug for our good friend David Latto, whose version of Geordie Monroe you hear at the beginning of every episode. David's playing at the Kirkcaldy Acoustic Music Club, which is at the Polish Club in Kirkcaldy on Thursday, which is the 27th of March. You can get tickets just now if you Google David Latto. Probably Google David Latto music. Actually, I don't know if there's other David Lattos out there who have higher rated Wikipedia pages. You can get tickets online, is my point. So make sure that you do, because obviously we all know how good David is. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back, of course, later in the week for another double header, as we'll put together our post-Morton and then preview another away trip to a slightly happier hunting ground, because we go away to Hamilton once again on Saturday. So as I say, thank you for listening. Speak to you then. Goodbye.